Hello and welcome to the #1 real estate podcast anywhere in the world.
Every time you say it, it just gets worse. It just gets worse.
We're a little preemptive on that.
Yeah.
My name's David Aquino. I'm a real estate agent in Toronto on the Frank Leon Associates team, and this is
My name is Jean-Michel, and I'm also a real estate agent in Toronto, and I'm also on the Frank Leon Associates team. And this is our first podcast. Welcome to the Associates.
episode #1. It's a working title.
Yeah,
But
I like it though. I think it goes well.
it's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah,
Jean-Michel, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What's your background? Tell us a little
look,
bit.
I moved to Toronto back in 2016. Before I was in Montreal, I used to do real estate back there, and different market, even different laws. There's a lot of stuff that's much different over there than it is here, and I just came out here just thinking that I'd have a little better life than I would in Montreal. Just Montreal's pretty much run with the government, with all the French and all that stuff, and it's not that it's a problem, but just that I prefer Ontario. But,
yeah, fair enough. You are French though, right?
Yeah. No, I am French. I do speak French. I have all that background. It's I think for growth and more potential, Ontario is probably a better place to be.
Yeah, 100%. And you lived in California for a little while, right? You were in LA?
Yeah, I was in LA for about a year, and I was there for a bit, and I had a job at a restaurant. So I used to do, before real estate, I was in restaurants, and I was running a restaurant in Rodeo Drive, actually. And we had a lot of celebrities that would come in, and it was fun. It was like being on holiday 24/7. But at the end of the day, we ended up there was some stuff that happened, and I had to come back home because I wasn't employed with them anymore.
What's life like? I've heard some mixed things about LA. If some people say that it's amazing, and some other people say that it's a little underwhelming. You
Honestly,
live there.
I loved it every minute of it. If I could still be
Yeah.
there, I would. I think it was great. Like every single day was sunshine. It was never it never felt like I always felt like there's something going on. I had a bunch of friends every night. There was always something going on in different areas. It was in Venice, Santa Monica, Brentwood area, Beverly
Sounds
Hills,
cool.
West Hollywood. All these things are just crazy. Just everyone's super ambitious down there too. So it's just kind of like really intense. It was like I said, a lot of fun, and I would love to go back there 100%.
It looks like it. Yeah, it honestly does. I'd like to go. I'd like to go at one point.
Yeah, for sure. No, you definitely should. If you do go, I'll give you some places you can hit up for sure.
Oh yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
What about you?
Yeah, so again, my name is David Aquino. Born and raised here in the GTA. So I spent most of my life in Pickering. That's where I grew up, went to high school, all that kind of stuff. After I graduated, I started selling cars. I was a marketing grad. Had an internship with a car dealership who used to take on students from the school all the time, and kind of got into sales by accident. So when I very first started, I was actually selling like travel trailers and RVs and like recreational vehicles, right? So kind of how I got into sales. Ended up transitioned over to the dealership side, the car dealership. Same family owns a few different dealerships, and sold cars. Was there for almost 8 years. It was great. It was great until it wasn't. And I make the joke. I tell this joke sometimes to people, is like, when you walk into a car dealership and you smell that fresh, like brand new rubber.
Yeah.
And anytime I'm in the area, if I'm in showings or if I'm going to look at something in that area and I drop by, I get a little bit of PTSD just smelling that rubber in the showroom. So yeah, I've been on Frank's team now for a little while, and servicing kind of all over the GTA, and yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
For
But
sure. This is not the first time we've known it. We were on the different teams before. Like we were on
we were, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't meet here at Frank, but we know each other for a little while as well. So it's funny. But what made you quit? Well, not quit. What made you leave car sales and move over to real estate?
You know what? You end up reaching a point where there's a certain ceiling in that industry. There just is. And I'll tell you one thing though, like car salespeople, it's not an easy gig. Like it's just not. Like it's a sales
like 9
job.
to 9, right? Every day. Like you just got to go to the dealership all the time.
Yeah. You know what? It is a little bit different. Real estate, obviously, your schedules even can be expanded even more so. Because on Sundays the dealership was closed. When the dealership's closed, you're not going in, you're not working, right? So a little bit different, but yeah, that's kind of how I learned how to, get into sales and learn how to negotiate and learn how to present product and overcome objections. And like it was a huge learning experience, like a real world learning experience, and you know, basically they paid me to basically get a very good education in communication and dealing with people. And you know, that's one of the most important skills to have in terms of, you know, being successful, is being able to know how to talk to people, and just, you know, knowing how to speak to people.
A hundred
So
percent. It's funny, you left a job that you were working 6 days a week to come to a job now you got to work 7 days a
7 days a week, yeah.
week.
But I mean, you know what? It's, I mean, hey, it's fun. I mean, we talk about this all the time. You know, helping people buy and sell is it's exciting, right? You know, it's a big deal for people. I mean, you've moved a few times in your life. I've moved a few times in my life personally. There's a lot of moving parts going on,
It's
right?
definitely not the
And
funnest thing to do either. It's not, it's stressful and it's not easy to move. I think
when,
having that helping hand next to you, helping you out is definitely a big positive for sure.
well, I mean, so I was getting my hair cut today,
Yeah.
and one of the guy getting his hair cut beside me, his barber's like, "Hey, you know, you got any plans for the holidays?" And he's like, you know, "Hey, I just moved," and he was talking about how stressful it was, and of course, you know, you're moving to a new place, you gotta get all your stuff packed up, moved in, you gotta transfer the utilities and the internet, and yeah, it's a lot, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Why don't we just kind of jump right in, right? So let's talk a little bit about the market, you know, kind of what you're seeing, the conversations you're having with buyers or sellers, like just anything at all when it comes to the market. What
No,
are you seeing?
100%. I mean, we're kind of like we're getting to that end point this year. We're December 13th. We're getting to the, everyone's kind of focusing on the holidays. Like I'm just at this point now, I'm just calling people and just touching base and seeing, how they're doing, and wishing them a happy holidays and stuff like that. Really, it's not. I think right now everyone's so preoccupied with their Christmas shopping and their holiday plans and everything. It's just that, like, thinking of purchasing a home, which is a huge purchase. It's not like there's not many people who are really thinking about that. Um, it's just, I think it's, a lot of things have been slowing down. Houses are not moving too much. People are starting to take off the houses too. Like I've noticed on more and more in some areas, there's less and less inventory. Because I think a lot of people are just taking their house off because they don't want to be disturbed during the holidays. I don't know what's your input. I know condos though. Condos have been
I mean,
nonstop, just adding and adding and adding. But I'm
yeah, so
talking about like houses, like
I think we're sitting at about 6 months worth of condo inventory. You
yeah,
know, we were talking about this the other day. Uh, the amount of homes on the market and the amount of good homes that have, you know, unique attributes, they're in good neighborhoods, they're on transit, is next to nothing. Like it's
yeah,
very limited. I'm not going to say it's next to nothing. And I told you when we were talking yesterday, you know, I was showing houses in Acton
mhm,
this week. And you know, if you don't know where Acton is, you just pull it up on a map. It's a little northwest of kind of Milton. You know, still
yeah,
about a half hour ish drive into Mississauga. You know, maybe 50 minutes to an hour into Toronto. You know, and even in Acton, I mean, if you're looking for two-story detached, you know, double car garage, 4 bedroom, like you're talking like a house that people would consider to be their, you know, their final home type of thing.
yeah, yeah.
There's not that many good homes under $1 million relatively close to the GTA.
No,
Durham is a much different story from my take on it. Like the prices in the 905 have come down significantly, you know,
oh for sure, yeah.
from what I'm seeing Pickering, Whitby, and Ajax. But yeah, just not a lot of good homes, condos
I just
or freehold.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of people when the market was going crazy, everyone would just buy anything they could get their hands on. It didn't matter where it was, if there was power lines behind it, if it was on a busy street and all these things. Now, like that things have slowed down and the interest rates are high and there's not many, like it's not as crazy, right? There's not well, I rarely see bidding wars. I do see bidding wars on, like you said, the houses that everyone will love and it's like the best houses in the neighborhood. Those will still sell and they still get lots of activity, but every other house, it's like there's something that there could be something wrong with it. It just sits there because before everyone would just needed a home. Now it's like, well, I don't want to live there. It's on a busy street. I have kids. I don't want to be there. It's like, oh, that one has a power line. Or this one's right off the highway. I can hear the highway. But before it's just
There's just not a
I'll
lot
take
of
whatever I can get.
a
Give me two.
there's not a lot of those good homes, and I'm still so my take on what I'm seeing, like, you know, boots on the ground perspective, is, you know, most of these freehold homes I'm seeing initially listed with an offer date in almost every scenario. And, you know, sometimes those properties are selling on offer night. In many cases, they're not. And, you know, I think it's just a matter of people that actually really need to sell and have a genuine motivation to sell, and people that don't. And I mean, I'm sure you're seeing that as well.
100%. But now I got a question for you. when it comes to offer dates, when you see that on properties, now it's like I can understand if there's not many houses in that area for sale and it's like, well, let's just put an offer date just to be safe. But like when you see that offer date and like there's literally 5 homes that are exactly the same just around the corner, and you see that offer date and you're just like, then their price the same price as everyone else, like what does that make you feel? Like it's just,
I mean, it's this whole psychology thing with sellers, and we talk about this as a team all the time. It's a very emotional thing to sell your home, especially a home that you've raised your family in and you've been there for a significant amount of time. You're part of the community, and oftentimes there's this kind of clouded perspective because you let your emotions get into it, and I feel the exact same way. Well, that duplex I have in Whitby, when I thought about selling that, even though I don't live there anymore, it was a very, emotional kind of like process for me. It wasn't like a realtor that, saw that address, did their own due diligence and said, "Hey, David, your property's worth this." So, I think
yeah,
it's
your
just
house is better than yours is
it's
the best in the
but
neighborhood,
it's
right?
it's just human nature, Jean-Michel.
Yeah, of course.
You know that. You talk to sellers all the
100%.
time.
Yeah.
And, I think it's just a very weird time right now in, Toronto real estate. Why wouldn't it be? Interest rates went from 0.25% to 5% in what, 18 months, 17 months? So, everybody wants to know kind of what's happening and
For
where the
sure.
market's going. Ah,
It's
what are
tough.
your thoughts on that? Where do you see the
I
market
mean,
going?
I don't know. It's tough to say. It's just like right now, the interest rates being held up so high is just, and so for so long as well, inventory is just piling on. It's just, at the end of the day, before we had no supply and a lot of demand, now we have a lot of supply and no demand. So I mean, as long as it keeps going the way it's going, I think we're going to see numbers coming down, and it's just going to be one of those, until buyers start getting the confidence back to feel like they can trust in real estate again and to start coming back out and start looking at properties. I think that's what it is. I have a lot of buyers that want to buy, but they're all sitting there, well, I can't afford anything. The interest rates are too high. We're going to wait for it to come down. And some other people are like, well, I heard it's going to drop by another 20%. I don't know if we're going to see another 20% drop. I think that's a crazy amount, especially in Toronto. But I mean, it's tough. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
I mean, I think the reality is that there's just the amount of good homes that come up for sale it feels like it's always been limited in this marketplace. You bring up a good point. Interest rates somewhere in the 6%, maybe a little bit less right now. You can find a fixed rate mortgage, but if you're getting stress tested at 7.5%, 8%, the appetite for people to go out there, and I'll tell you one other thing too. So I read this article this morning, Benjamin Tall, it's like the chief economist at CIBC. And the article headline was, "We're approaching a buyer's market with no buyers." And I thought that was kind of interesting because when you talk to any, professional in any industry, an economist, an investor, banker, they'll all going to tell you the same thing. We don't know where the market is going to end up, but this is what's happening right now. So one of the arguments is that, interest rates are going to come down and all these buyers are going to come out into the marketplace. And that very well might be true. But the flip side to that is like what's happening in the labor market. If people start to get laid off in large numbers, is a 0.5%, is a 1% decrease in interest rates,
I think it has
like
to be like 3% to be honest. For anything to
do
like
you
for us to
really
see
think
a
we're ever
huge
gonna?
difference,
Do you
it has
think
to come back down to like 3%.
how long is that going to take though? I mean, that we could be talking about 2025, 2026
Yeah. I
until
mean,
we.
I've seen articles from banks too, and they're all anticipating it to be end of 2025. Our rate should be 2.5 to 3%,
Oof.
and the Bank of Canada rate. And I mean, I think that's a healthy. I think that's a healthy rate for the economy to increase. If you think about it, before COVID, our rate was like 3.29 for
Mm-hmm.
for a 5-year fix, and the market was starting to get to where what happened was COVID. Like there was things that were starting to pick up. You could notice that the inventory was coming down and more bidding wars. And then COVID hit, and when COVID hit, everything kind of fell to a stop. Everyone was like, "What's going to happen? Is real estate over? Is everyone going to lose their job?" And all these things. And there was like a 3-week period where if you were smart enough, if you bought in those 3 weeks, you got yourself a deal, because after that, things just started going
Well,
crazy.
easier said than done. I
No,
mean,
100%. I mean, hindsight 2020, it's great. It's like to know what you know now and you go back, you definitely make different decisions. I would have sold my house in
February
January
2022.
of 2022.
February. Well, I actually think about that sometimes, and I think that February 2022 maybe was even a little too late because then you run the risk of buyers not closing.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Yeah. I think
Make
January, you're right there. You
January,
30-day
quick,
closing, boom,
quick
you're done. You
closing,
get out.
45
Yeah.
day, 60-day closing before that first rate hike.
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, frankly, it's me and you have never really lived through, such a drastic change in, in housing prices, right? I mean, when was the last time, like when I'm talking about like a 30% decline, maybe look back at
Well,
like
I've never been
27,
in a decline like this, but I've been in a slow market. Like I said, Montreal is a different
100,
market. When I was in Montreal, things would take 3 months to 6 months to sell. I knew people who'd have 30 listings and they would sell one a month and they're not
and
moving.
that's
So when I
normal over
came to
there.
Toronto and I found out you buy a house and you can sell it in a week, I was like, why wouldn't you invest in real estate? You can pull your money out so quick, right?
Sure.
And now people are going crazy. It's like it takes 2 months to sell a house. That's a normal amount of time in any other country to sell your house, 2 months. That's
Right.
just normal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've heard something in New York City, for example, in Manhattan, the average days on market is somewhere around a year for
Yeah.
a lot of those properties to
Well, I
sell.
mean, some properties are ridiculously priced. Like there's not many, you got such a
Sure.
small pool of buyers. It's not,
Sure, but I
yeah.
mean, think about that. Think about if you operated in that market exclusively and you had listings that could potentially be on the market a year from now. Like,
Well, there are some in Toronto. If you look at the Bridle Path area and in Forest Hill area, you have those
sure,
ones that literally you can take a look and they just sit there at that 22 million mark. They haven't moved and they're just not moving. It's just,
the home's probably not even occupied for
yeah,
99% of the
just
year.
empty.
If
Yeah.
hey, if they can get that number, great. If not, they'll just hold on to it, no problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, what else we were talking about? I mean,
Well,
we
tell
were
me, David, on a sidetrack,
go ahead, go ahead.
what's the funnest thing you think you like about real estate? What's the one thing that you love so much about real estate? You just like, every day
Finding
you go
deals.
finding deals.
Finding deals. Find it. And I mean, it's not, it's easier said than done. And I mean, think about it. If you're a buyer and all these new TRESA changes and the way that kind of, the representate the difference in relationship between the consumer and agents has, greatly changed now recently with some of the new regulations. And, if there's this notion that people think that you absolutely have to have a realtor, which me and you both know you don't. You don't need a realtor to buy. You don't. Just hear me out. You don't need a real estate agent. You don't. You can pick up the phone and you can have your lawyer draft up the offer. You can.
Yeah.
But when you're looking, I mean, think about this logically. You're a
I mean,
full-time
you don't need
worker.
anyone to do anything if you really think about it.
Fair.
You're like
You could go. You
you
could
go
go to
fix your car yourself.
you can go
Doesn't
to
mean it's gonna
court and
get done
represent.
well,
You can
right?
go to court and represent yourself. You can give yourself stitches. You can go
Yeah.
and take the transmission out of your engine and
Yeah.
then call a professional and pay twice the price
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
get it fixed. But I mean, think about it. If you're working a full-time job, the number one, just going on realtor.ca and finding these properties, and then you pick up the phone, you book an appointment with the listing agent or with the listing brokerage, and you're negotiating with somebody who does this every single day, by all accounts, and negotiates these types of properties all the time. I mean, how are you really supposed to find the time to do that and then have the know-how and the experience to really make sure that you're protected? Okay, I'll say one other thing. So, I spend a lot of time. I like to go on Twitter and I like to follow what's happening, right? And you see, one of
X
the
now, by the way. Twitter doesn't
it's
X.
X now. Yeah, they'll never give up that URL. It'll always be Twitter, but yes, X.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments from someone was, well, hey, what do we even need buyer's agents for? All they do is open the door. I find the house online myself. I tell them which one I like. Why don't we just have the seller's agent write the contract?
Yeah. It's a great idea. I think it's amazing.
Does
Do
that
it.
sound?
Give me a call. I'll write those contracts up for you.
But I mean, I think it's just it's
I think
a
you have to look at it where it's like, yeah, if you're just looking at a real estate agent who's just opening doors 100%, yeah, you don't need one because you can just do that yourself. But I think you got to look at an agent as in the information they're bringing you, because again, you call that seller's agent. You go see that house. What information do you think they're going to provide you? The information that's going to benefit you, or the information that's going to benefit his sellers? You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you're
just a
not going to call
mindset
the
that a lot
same
of
lawyer
it's a
to
mindset that a lot
represent
of
both parties. Sorry,
yeah,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, no, and you bring up a good point. And it's just a mindset that people have, right? I mean, think about how expensive housing in the GTA is. Just think about that for a second. And realtors are going to be, a very easy target because the argument is that, hey, well, they're increasing the price and the commission and so on and so forth. And, I mean, maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know. My perspective is that the policy at the government level you know, federally, provincially. That's going to dictate what's happening with the real estate market. I mean, people buy everything. We're a monthly payment based society, whether it's your credit card bill or your everything, your gym membership, everything you pay by monthly, or you pay monthly. You know, and when we have interest rates go from, like I said, quarter point to 5%, I mean, go open up a mortgage calculator, type in a $400,000, $500,000
Oh
mortgage,
yeah, no,
which is
it's
very
double.
low,
Yeah,
and then go from quarter percent or go from, you know,
it's huge. It
199.
goes from like 2,000 to 4 grand. It's insane.
It's absolutely insane. So
Like your salary hasn't gone up that much either. Like some people, I mean, I think it's absurd that they increased it this much. I think they've gone a little too far when it comes to increasing it, but what's done is done. You can't go back in time now. But, you know, I think when you got to look at the market in general, is just, you know, it's just funny. Like you're saying, like buyers, you know, it's a buyer's market, but there's no buyers to be seen. It's like, you know, buyers are willing to pay 300K over asking before with like not even batting an eye. It's like, how much do I go? I want to buy this house. The last one sold for 2 million. Oh, I want to put 2.2. Okay, sure. And
it,
you know, it's just it went insane. Now it's like you can negotiate, you can get it under asking, you can put your conditions of inspection and financing. You have a safer purchase, and everyone's worried that like, oh, it's going to go lower. It's going to go lower. I
wow.
can understand if you're planning to buy and sell in a year, don't buy. It's not your time. But if you're planning to buy, you're going to stay there for 5 to 10 years. They're like, what's the issue? Like, I like in my mind, like
There's
if
a lot
you're,
of fear out there.
yeah,
There's a lot of fear out there. Some people really do believe the market could come down another 20 or 30%. And frankly, it could happen. You know, is it likely? Probably not. But you know, that's the mindset. I find the consumer is more worried to be wrong than they're excited to be right. You know, like they're just, people are afraid to lose a lot of money. And now all of a sudden, think about if you've been waiting and waiting and waiting to buy a home, and you know friends, you know family that bought late 2021 or early 2021, you know, they bought at the peak, and now, you know, that $1.4 million house in Kitchener, you know, people are buying it, like people just threw total caution to the wind. The banks were appraising these homes. I mean, we both operated during COVID. How many appraisal issues did you ever see? Ever?
zero, zero,
Ever? You know,
never.
80,000, $100,000,
You see them
you
more
know,
now than ever before because now it's like everyone's worried. It's like the last one sold for 1.1. You're selling for 1,050,000, and we're like, oh, we're worried it's not going to appraise out. What are you talking about? But before it's like the last one sold for 1.2, and you bought yours for 1.5, and it
there were no
appraised out.
appraisal issues on anything.
Yeah.
So you know, there's a lot to blame in terms of where we're at, you know, as a market. And then the flip side to that is, you know, Toronto's the fourth biggest city in North America. Like that's a fact. Toronto's the
Oh,
fourth
I thought we were second. I thought we were the second.
fourth
Mexico's bigger.
fourth biggest city. It's Mexico City, New York, LA, and Toronto. Fourth biggest city, right? So you look at all these major cities and they all have insane house prices. San Francisco, LA, Chicago, they have these obscene home prices. And you know, is that just kind of where we're gonna be?
Well, I
Because
mean, if you look at just Canada in general, what other cities is it worth moving to? Like, let's be honest.
Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal,
Yeah,
you
Montreal,
know,
you go if
and
you speak French. I mean, I don't think it's pure English. You don't go there.
it
But I
is a
mean,
pro
like,
it is a problem for people, eh? Like
yeah,
to
like
go and
you
live
have to
there.
go there. You have to speak French. They have all these. They're in your business there. You know, like the government's in your business. They force you to speak French at work. You have to fill out all your documents in French. There's a whole thing.
Hmm.
So it's like it's not. You know, it's not the best place to be for an English person, right? So I mean, a lot of people, I think, like when you look at it, it's like Toronto and Vancouver. Like you go to Toronto, there's just more opportunity, right? So it's like Toronto's like a mega hub for Canada. It's the
Makes
only,
sense.
yeah.
It makes sense. And you know, there's so many moving parts in this. This is why nobody can say where the market's going to be in, you know, in 12 months from now. And that's why it's such a hard decision for people to move. And the reality is a lot of sellers, if you're someone who's been in a property for 10, 15, 20 years or longer, if you have no mortgage on your property, you know, maybe your mindset is, hey, I'm not going to sell the house. I'll just stay put. I mean, you're having these conversations on a daily basis. What are we seeing mostly? It's people that own
Well, you know what? It's
multiple
funny that you say
properties
that. Yeah.
that have an investment property, or two that it was negative cash flow, $300 a month. Now it's $2,500 cash flow, and they just don't want to hold on to these properties anymore.
So
What were
there's
you
a
gonna
lot of that, but there's also like what you're saying, people with no mortgages. There's a lot of people I've been meeting who are retiring or retired, and they have a certain amount of money they're getting every month, right? So at the time they were living, it was fine, but a lot of the stuff, a lot of the taxes have gone up, the expenses for the houses have gone up, you know, gas, electricity, all these things have gone up a lot. And like I'm actually meeting quite a few people who are like, they don't have a mortgage. They have a lot of assets, but you know, they don't have the cash flow to maintain everything. So they're
Sure.
thinking of unloading one or two properties. And it's, you know, it's hard to see because it's just like, you know, like we're going through this whole inflation thing, and then all we can see is just increase in taxes here, increases in taxes there. It's just, and it feels like that's just fueling the inflation, right? Like, you know, if taxes go up, that means prices of goods will go up. That means, you know, prices, that means everyone has less money. It's just like a whole vicious
Less
circle.
money, man. Less money to spend, and it's a scary idea of where this economy is going, because you look at the U.S. economy in comparison, it's doing much better than
Oh yeah,
the
they
Canadian
recovered much
economy.
better than we have for sure. Yeah,
Y-
they've recovered much
We
better.
we have this industry here, we have this economy here in Canada where so much of it is based on our housing,
And
and
the thing
it's
is, I think our whole economy is based on housing, but I feel like a lot of people who live here in Canada watch way too many US shows because they feel like they're in the US, where like the US and Canada are completely different when it comes to debt, when it comes to you know, all that structure. So like when people are going out to get a car or anything, it's like to lease it in the States, it's less expensive here. So when you see all these like YouTubers and TikTokers driving these Ferraris and Lamborghinis, it's not that expensive compared to what it is here. And like I don't know, like people in Canada just seem to pile on debt and think that it's like, oh, well, everyone's doing it. And like, yeah, 100% everyone's doing it. But like our debt per capita is massive.
yeah, I think they say it's like the number one, we're the number one consumer household debt in the G7 here in
Yeah,
Canada.
something like that. Yeah.
And it's like the Canadian dream all of a sudden is just to own your house financially. If you own a house in Canada, you're considered to be rich. And it's just it's a scary thing. I mean, we don't build anything here anymore in Canada. We've become a service-based economy. Like you mentioned, there's only a handful of cities that have mass demand. Okay, and that's not to discredit any of the small towns. Small town living, it's sure it's great. Living in the countryside, I'm sure there's a lot of great things, but this is not a snub at small cities. It's just based on the actual numbers. Most people are going to come to the GTA. They're going to move to Vancouver, Montreal. Like you said, if you're bilingual, or now recently we're seeing
More people go to Calgary. I think a
Calgary
lot of people are
prices.
leaving Toronto to go to Calgary.
Calgary market's been doing really really well this year.
Yeah.
So
Well, the prices there are so low. It's like a third of the price that they are in
They
Toronto.
were,
You
they
know,
were.
imagine
And they're
300.
quickly creeping up there, and they got beautiful landscape. Like you're not
Yeah.
too far from Banff, and
Yeah.
like you're close to a lot of like great nature
Have you
out in
ever
the
gone
West
to
Coast.
Calgary, David?
I drove past the north half of Calgary.
I drove through it too. Banff is probably the one that has the nicest landscaping, but
Banff is where I
Calgary
went.
itself is just a flat. It's just flat.
Banff is where I went to, right? And I remember
I've gone to Banff too.
right before you drive into the mountains, they have that old
Yeah.
when Calgary hosted the Olympics and
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
in like '86 or something like that. But that's just it's these are all just results of how our policy has been here in Canada for so long. I mean, look at the Eglinton Crosstown. Look at that
That's
project.
been going on forever, and they're still
Look
testing
at
it. It's been
but just
completed forever.
these are the people that make the decisions
Yeah.
that essentially have these massive impacts on our day-to-day lives. Okay, the Crosstown, they started in 2011. They started that project.
Yeah.
Budget of five and a half billion. 2011. Expected completion 2020. Now
Well, good thing COVID
this
happened, right? Because
the
now they have an
C
excuse for the delays.
the CEO of Metrolink, I think his name's Phil Vester.
Yeah.
He recently came out to the media and he said, I do not want to predict what year. What year, he said. He said, I don't want to predict what year because I don't want to be wrong. And I was working with a client a few months ago, and she works in the transit space, and she started telling me a little bit about like Metrolinks. I guess
They
Metrolinks is
also just closed the line from Scarborough Town, right? They closed that line as well, right?
I know that it's a total disaster.
Yeah.
They're now 3 years over budget, or 3 years over schedule. The budget went from 5.5 billion to now we're sitting at 12.2, I think. 12.2 billion but these are
You just get
these
taken for a ride by these construction companies.
these are I don't pretend to be an expert on this. I know that, I shouldn't say I know. I think that logically in, a city like Toronto, this international city, that we should be able to build a 25 stop light rail train from Mount Dennis to Kennedy across Eglinton. Seems pretty straightforward. Here we are, 3 years later, going on. It's going to be 4 years very, very shortly. And imagine this. Imagine you had a private business. You're sitting down, November, December, your business plan for the next year. And you're going to do this project for the next year. And, construction, everybody knows, sure, things sometimes you get delays and you go over budget. Think about how many private companies out there could withstand, being basically a 100% plus increase in your budget. And how viable would you be moving forward? It's
Right. Yeah, I mean, I hope they're not contracting this company again. I mean, well, let's whatever. It is what it is.
again, I think public transit. I think public transit is a big answer to housing affordability
Right,
because
making more accessibility to make it easier to get
more
around.
accessible, like more high-speed rails. You can come
I
into
mean,
into
it'd
the
be
into
nice to
these
have
hubs.
one high-speed rail in Canada.
It's just a sad state of affairs, like everybody's hurting. GDP per capita is way down. A lot of these numbers, when it comes to like the overall GDP numbers, a lot of those numbers aren't really telling the whole story because they're not adjusted for immigration. So,
Right.
and I think we would all agree that immigration is a good thing. I mean, my family, we were immigrants. I'm, third generation now Canadian. It's not like we've been here for that long, in hindsight, but it was planned. It was planned better, like
Right. I think, if you look at new Canada versus old Canada, I mean, like, it's not the same, we're not in the same country that our parents moved in, or, your grandparents or my grandparents lived in. It's completely different. But I mean, dude, we can go on about this for a long time. And I mean, like, I think this was a good first episode. I mean, I think that was good. I hope you guys liked it.
I liked it.
Yeah, I think it was good. I think we'll do it again next week. No, next week, maybe.
See you next year. We'll have a lot of new information to report on.
Yeah, I hope you guys liked it. And, the best thing you guys can do is subscribe, share, and comment. I mean, that'd be
Like
awesome.
and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Smash that like button.
Even if you dislike it, just dislike it too, because that helps us too.
Okay, perfect. You got anything else you want to say, Jean-Michel?
No, I mean, I think this is nice. I think we can we'll probably start bringing in some guests and stuff at some point, and just have people come in. We're calling ourselves the associates for the reason that we'll probably start interviewing some of the associates on the team as well.
I like that. I could probably invest into a nice mic and some lighting.
Yeah, there you go.
In the future. So hopefully the production,
maybe get a nice camera, get a better background as well,
the production value will increase over time.
Exactly. There you go.
Right on. All right, Jean-Michel, appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week. We'll see you next week.